Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. Kind of forgot to hit the record button, so it's not the very start. But anyway, we're gonna set up a CI environment this evening, and I'm gonna do this in GitHub Actions, which I've never done before. I don't think. No, I've never done it. I've set up Circle CI, but never GitHub Actions. And as I said a minute ago, pre-recording, I'm doing this totally cold. I didn't prime myself. I didn't do any research before this. I'm starting from a standing stop. So with that said, I'm gonna share my screen and get started. And as I go, I'll share my thought process. Part of what I want to share in this is, again, how I approach something that I have no idea how to do. So here we go, share screen. Here we are. Okay, and incidentally, this project that I'm going to use, I'm building my own CI service because I'm not particularly happy with Circle CI or GitHub Actions or any of these ones that I've seen. And so I've had the idea for years to build my own, but I know, well, I didn't want to take on a big project like that, but I finally just decided to say, screw it. And I needed to scratch the itch. So I started building this. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I'm setting up CI tonight. It's just incidentally, somebody asked me to show CI setup at the same time that I'm building this. Anyway, this will be a convenient project that we can use. Before anything, let me just run my test suite just to make sure that it runs. Yeah, this is a brand new project, so there's only 12 tests. Okay. So here's the first step in anything I do these days. How do I set up CI in GitHub Actions? Okay, I need to set up a GitHub workflows directory. And I'm going to do this on a separate branch. GitHub Actions, I'll call it. Okay, and here's an example of this file. Oh, and Ben says GitHub does have templates for Rails too. Okay, good to know in case we get stuck. Okay, GitHub Workflows CI. All right, so I'm going to create a GitHub Workflows folder. And then I'll open GitHub Workflows ci.yml. Okay. Define jobs. All right. So this, I think, goes in the same file. Oh, and here's the whole file all together. Okay. So I'll undo that and I'll just paste this whole thing. Okay. And I'm going to take a second and read this. Actions checkout. Okay, I think that's like a native GitHub thing. Maybe I have set up GitHub Actions before. I really just don't remember. Oh, I see. This is not Rails. Let's do this. Give me a new file, but for Rails. Okay. And I happen to know that at least the Ruby version is not a match for what I have. So I'm going to do 3.1.2. Everything else, I think I'll leave it the way it is. Because I'm not sure that it's right, but I'm also not sure that it's wrong. Okay. What now? I'm going to commit this file. Check the Actions tab on GitHub. Okay. Whoops. Go to the GitHub page for your repository. Okay, I'll do that first. And go to the Actions tab. Okay, you should see your workflow listed there. I don't think I've pushed this yet. Refreshing this page. It's taking a long time. If you've just pushed your code, the workflow might be running. Okay. Still waiting for this to refresh. Oh, there we go. Okay. Search workflows. I don't know what it would be called. I'll search for CI. Okay, I don't see it. So let me read this a little more closely. Okay. This doesn't seem consistent with what I'm seeing.
You put onto a different branch. It's only running on main, I think.
Oh, good point. Okay. So let me change this. So instead of main, it is GitHub Actions. Okay.
It looks like you also edited line 25, which was the, I think, Ubuntu version or something like that.
Oh. Oh yeah, good point. I was not paying attention. Okay. Okay. Now we'll go to Actions. Okay. And this looks different. Okay. Seems like maybe so far so good. Now it's just a bit of waiting. While we're waiting, we were talking about conferences earlier. I think most of you guys are aware, but in case anybody doesn't know, I'm putting on my own conference in March of 2024. It's called Sin City Ruby. It takes place in Las Vegas. I've started announcing some speakers. I spent months and months on this website, just so you guys know. We have Irina Nazarova, CEO of Evil Martians, Vladimir Dementyev, also from Evil Martians. Maybe you guys familiar with Evil Martians? You've probably encountered their blogs and stuff online. I think they're great. And then Adrian Marin, he has this product called Avo. And he's pretty active in the Rails community also. Be announcing more speakers soon. We have, as of now, a total of 12 speakers lined up, and a lot of familiar names. Okay, so it looks like it failed on. Oh, and by the way, tickets go on sale July 17th, 2023. And if you go to sincityruby.com, you can put in your email to get notified. Okay, we're copying database CI YML to database YML. Database CI YML, no such file or directory. Okay. So usually what I do when I get any kind of error these days is I just copy it into ChatGPT. I get this error when it runs. Okay. Oops. Config database CI.yml. Okay. Database.ci.yml. Okay, now open my, oh, sorry, 1 second. There we go, somebody's joining. Okay, I'll open my main config database YML. And here I'm using some infairs, but I think I can just do Saturn test and maybe that'll be okay. Add config.database.ci.yml. Okay. Okay, and I think that should trigger a new build. Okay. We'll watch that one go. I guess I'll have to come up with something new to say to fill each bit of time here. Or if anybody else.
I'd like to know what ChatGPT told you about the formation of the Great Lakes.
Oh yeah. We had a nice long conversation about that. Where the
Near
heck
the
is that?
bottom.
Oh wow, you must have really been scrutinizing my my history there.
I want to see if you're cheating on the celebrity death question.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of a area of study for me. I got curious one day how the Great Lakes were formed. You know, I live right by them. And the answer everybody always gave me was glaciers. It's like, well, okay, but like that's not very satisfying. All right, we'll pick back up this glacier conversation next time we're waiting for something. Okay. And then, as always, never think when you can not think. So I'm just going to paste this here and see what ChatGPT says in my principle of conserving mental energy. Okay, the error suggests PostgreSQL is not running or it's accepting connections on localhost. Okay. This looks eerily similar to a Docker Compose config. I have a suspicion about how GitHub Actions works under the hood. Okay. It's worth just blindly trying some stuff for a little while. So let's give that a shot.
What are you using for your credentials in your database.ci.yaml?
I will take a peek. One moment. GitHub Actions. Whoops, that's not it. Config. There we go. See anything interesting there, Jonathan?
You don't have a password set.
That's true. But I often don't. This is interesting. Well, I guess let's have one. And if we set it to Postgres, then it matches what's here. I don't know if that's important or not. But I'll just give that a try. And if this doesn't work, it might be time to actually start using our brains. unfortunately.
So Google Bard confirms that GitHub Actions are built on Docker. In fact, you can use a straight up Docker file or Docker images.
You can use a straight up Docker file.
Yep.
Well, shit. I'm going to do that because I have one already. Okay. Well, this might work, but if it doesn't work, then maybe I'll just use my Docker file. Okay. That is extraordinary. Okay, the install dependencies step, interestingly, did not work. Whoa, they have Ruby up to 3.2.2 now. Interesting. Okay, well, we don't need to mess with any of that. And I'm actually going to start completely over. What was it called? I don't know if it even matters. ci.yml. Okay. Name change main once again to GitHub Actions. Okay, and my Docker file is not located here. It's here. But is that even right? Maybe it is. Let me try something real quick. Rails test. It should be in my history somewhere here. Docker compose run. Yeah. So here I'm just running my test suite locally. No, but that's not right because I'm doing Docker compose. This isn't Docker compose, it's just Docker. Let me try the same idea. Okay. If I do cat, well, not cane, that's weird. GitHub. Okay, and I'm going to copy this command. But again, I'm not going to do Docker file. I'm going to do .saturnci/Docker file. Well, building's a fine test, I guess, but that's not what I ultimately want to do. I want to run. All right, while that's building, I'm going to do this.
I mean, the run command is at the bottom of that Docker file, right?
Yes. And I'm confused as to why I'm running the server in that Docker file. You know, I think I have it messed up. Okay, so I have this other project. It appears to be the exact same in this other project that I know is working. Okay. Well, that built successfully. Maybe I don't even want to mess with all this. Maybe I just want to send it out there and try it. What do we have to lose? Okay. So to review, we have this new config file with the Docker build. Oh, and I need to fix the Docker file name. And then it runs the test suite. All right. So let's fix that file name. Saturn CI/Docker file. Okay.
Is that tag my Rails app? Is that correct?
I think it's arbitrary and it can be anything. It just needs to match this, is what I'm gathering.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Add config file, because this is brand new. Okay. I'll be very surprised if this actually works. Okay. Now I can regale you with my entertaining stories for a bit again.
Iceberg.
Yes, indeed. Not icebergs, Mike. Glaciers. Different thing. So people always told me how the Great Lakes formed was from glaciers, but it's like that's not a very satisfying answer because it's like how? And they would say like, well, the glaciers scooped it out. It's like, okay, well, again, like how exactly did that happen? Because with a glacier on a mountain, I can understand how that glacier might carve things out, but Michigan is extremely flat. So how's a glacier going to carve stuff out? Well, turns out there's two kinds of glaciers. There's alpine glaciers and continental glaciers. And in Michigan, during the last ice age, we had continental glaciers, or one continental glacier. We had ice about 2 miles thick on, oh, here we go. Okay, so key not found database username. Okay, that's not shocking whatsoever. Okay, so let me explain what just happened. So what I think happened is it's trying to connect using this database username, but there is no nvar database username that's set. So we have to establish that. I don't know the exact syntax for that. So I'm just going to say, how do I add an nvar database username to this? I suspect it's very similar to the Docker compose syntax. And if so, we can probably actually just copy straight from, I don't like that because that's going to get long. That seems inconvenient. Can I not specify my envars in the YAML? Okay. Yeah, one kind of ChatGPT lesson is don't take what it says as gospel, and don't be afraid to push back on it and say, hey, I didn't like that answer. Do you have a better one? And quite often it's like, oh yeah, here you go. Do I have that indentation right? Looks like I do. Okay. So I want to do this. I'm going to go to my Docker compose. And I think all these can be arbitrary. They just need to exist. So I'll set all those things to that. So I guess one small lesson from this is if you're setting up GitHub Actions, a little background in Docker can be helpful. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of consider some Docker understanding to be, I don't know how I'd put it. I don't want to say table stakes, but it's kind of like part of the body of knowledge that I feel like all developers should have, just because it's so incredibly useful.
We use it extensively even for local development environment setup because it just makes all that go away, and it just runs a Docker file.
Yeah. Yeah, I should do some presentations in these on Docker. Took me forever to learn how to use it. Yeah, so anyway, continental glacier. And the thing with the continental glacier, we had this layer of ice 2 miles thick. The snow, okay, so the way that continental glacier forms, snow falls on the ground, gets thicker and thicker. The snow compresses under the weight and turns into ice. Hopefully the Docker tutorials are mature these days. I hope so too, but I don't know if that's the case. Oh, it says the same thing. Oh, that's interesting. So we'll go running back to ChatGPT and we'll do this. We'll have to give it our current file. Say, here's my config file. I'm getting this error. See what it has to say about that. Seems like the environment variables are not being passed to your Docker container. It seems like that to me too. Please revise your Docker run command. Okay. Oh. Well, that's kind of weird if we have to do that, but all right. Add nvares to Docker run command. Okay. So basically the ice forms a pile and the glaciers slide down the sides of the pile because the ice has plasticity and so it can kind of slide against itself. And so when that sliding action occurs, the glacier, the leading edge of the glacier kind of plows the ground and carves out a basin. And that's how most of the Great Lakes formed. Lake Superior, the biggest one, was actually created because a rift valley opened about 1.2 billion years ago, and that's how that one happened. So that's just there by total coincidence, is my understanding. Superior formed differently from the 4 other Great Lakes. So anyway,
in my defense, those little pieces of glacier that break off are called icebergs.
Even if isn't that only in the ocean though? Well, maybe in a Great Lake. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, according to Google Bard, but you'd have to compare that with ChatGPT, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't see why an iceberg in a lake wouldn't be an iceberg. Okay. So it looks like that still didn't work. This is different though, right? Before we were just getting database username. Now the first one we're getting is database password. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say about that. Did I not include a password? Oh, I guess I didn't. Okay. And I think I saw another one too. Database. Oh, did I mean database port? Okay. Whoops. Oh yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's it for Glacier Talk, unless anybody wants to talk more.
That was super cool.
I get it. Anything else interesting in my ChatGPT history? Not really. I did figure out something cool today. I figured out a new way to prompt ChatGPT. Whoops, I'm not even in the right place. Maybe it was this one. I put ChatGPT in this certain loop behavior. I'm just going to search for the word loop. Yeah. So I said, I want to work in this loop. First, so I'm going to ask you how to do something. I said to ChatGPT. I said, first, ask me a question about my code base. For example, do you have an endpoint that ingests GitHub webhooks? If so, paste the code. And I said, if at this point you know enough to confidently give me specific instructions on how to do what I want, please tell me and exit the loop. Otherwise, repeat from step one. And that kicks off this really interesting back and forth. It becomes interactive, so that rather than just saying like, hey, if this is the case, then do this, or if you're doing this, then do this other thing. Like if you ask a person for advice on something, if they're a good advice giver, they're not going to just start talking. They're going to say, well, do you have this or do you have this? So I found that really, really useful. Okay, now it still can't. Oh, probably because I didn't add it to there. Okay. Kind of wish this feedback cycle were a little shorter, but that's okay. These kind of things kind of go like this. I clicked that link, but it didn't navigate. Anyway, while we're waiting for this, how about let's do a little exercise? Might be interesting. Okay, I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to behave in the following manner. No. Well, that's fine, I guess. Okay. My question is, how do I set up CI for my project? I'm asking an intentionally vague question. Okay, these are all good questions. And I'll answer. Rails, web app, yes, Git, GitHub, yes. Let's say GitHub Actions. I can't read that last one. I'm going to say I have a doc Docker file. Let's see what it says back. But first, let's check over on this other tab. Okay, so this failed yet again. Let's see how it failed. Okay. That gives us something different. I'm actually going to take a quick look. Host name. Couldn't find that host name. So that seems to be this line here. I don't know what the database host is supposed to be, but it's not too shocking that there's not one running on that particular name we gave it. So let's find out what that is actually supposed to be. And I'm gonna get a second ChatGPT window going here. And I'll just paste the error. I better be a little bit careful with my rate of prompts so we don't run out of credits partway through. Okay. It doesn't really seem to know. So at this point, I'm going to revert to Google. GitHub Actions, Postgres host. I'm just going to search the page for the word host. This one happens to say Postgres. So does that one, unless it's the same one. This one happens to say localhost. What the heck? We'll just try localhost. Change Postgres host to localhost. I'm not always a big fan of trial and error, but sometimes trial and error is cheap. And when trial and error is cheap, I don't mind doing it. Okay, anyway, coming back to here where we had our loop technique, it's telling us some stuff about our file here. All right, so I guess it got to the point where it felt like it knew enough and it could give some suggestions. But you know, that's, I think, a higher quality way of getting to the answer than if I had just asked. Let's even try it. How do I set up CI for my project? While we're waiting for that, we can check on this again. Still building the Docker image, okay. Yeah, see, this is much less helpful. It tells us to sign up for a, oh, and this is interesting. I don't even know what service that might be for. I think it might be just kind of a generic example. Looks kind of like a Circle CI. Oh, yeah, it is Circle CI. Yeah, so that's not nearly as helpful. It's much better if it asks for some details about our situation. This other one, this one here, this is much more actionable than that other one over there. So I plan to write a blog post soon sharing this kind of style of prompt so there's something that's copy pastable. Okay, so this failed. Okay, same deal basically. It can't connect to the host. Okay. Somebody's saying something in the chat. Need to update the compiling XKCD and waiting on ChatGPT. Indeed. Okay. So now I guess I have to actually educate myself a little bit. Service containers, okay. And I want to be efficient about ingesting this information. So I'm going to first take a scan through and see what seems relevant. Okay, running jobs in containers. Okay, so we have this Postgres image. Do we have that in our configuration? No. Okay. Well, that seems important. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go back to ChatGPT. And I'm going to say this. I see this example in the GitHub Actions docs where they have a config file specifying a Postgres service. My config file doesn't have such a thing. Fix my config file so it can run and connect to Postgres successfully. See what it does for that. My prediction would be that ChatGPT is smart enough to take those things I just gave it and combine them to create something that will plausibly work. And just curious, in this example, are they including the envars in the run step? No, they're not. Okay, well, whatever. Ben says got to run. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so I'm going to replace what I have with this. Okay, so I added a Postgres service. Add Postgres service. All right, so I want an honest answer for anybody who has set up GitHub Actions. Did you have an easier time than this, or was it just as hard for you?
It's kind of like Rails where it fails and you're like, what magic has failed me? How do I figure out what to do next?
This feels roughly similar to just setting up a Docker and or Docker Compose environment where there's a lot of trial and error and it can be a little bit mysterious. Just what little thing did I get not exactly right?
Yeah, I had better luck just going into GitHub Actions and searching for a Rails YAML in there. They've already got
Okay.
one set up, and I was able to take that and edit it and kind of figure it out
Okay.
from there.
I might end up doing that. Okay, Air said when you started your current iteration, you based off the Docker file, you likely wanted to use the Docker compose.ymls, which would include dependencies. Yeah, you may well be right. So services. Yeah, like maybe I should just more or less copy this verbatim. It's under services, yeah. Yeah, if this doesn't work, which it didn't. Yeah, connection not established. Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to forget about Redis for a moment, because who cares about that? That just makes things more complicated. Okay, and database host. I think I actually do want Postgres for this, because I think the host is supposed to match the name of the service. Yeah. Let me look at my .env off screen, because I don't know if there's anything sensitive in there. Go code. Interesting. Yeah, okay. I don't think that's relevant actually. I'm gonna push this now. Okay. That immediately failed. Invalid type for job.environment. Interesting. Okay. Does it give me like a line or anything like that? Line 1? Invalid workflow file. Well, that's... Oh, my indentation's bad. Wow, isn't that embarrassing? Okay, let's fix that. Okay. And as always, people can hop off as they need to. I'm going to keep going for a bit. It's personal now. Just waiting for the page to load. Okay, looks like that was an immediate failure. Also, unexpected value environment. Line 25. Oh, okay. That's not exactly line 25, but whatever. Okay, so I don't think this can just be a literal copy paste of my Docker Compose. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say I have the following non-working GitHub Actions config file. Here is my working Docker compose.yml. Based on my working Docker compose config, fix my GitHub Actions file for me. And in the meantime, I'm going to search for GitHub Actions Rails template, because maybe I should just take Chuck's advice and do that. Was it something like this, Chuck?
Yeah, if you go to the actions page on there, there's a there's a button that says like new action. Or on mine there is.
Oh, like if
Go
I
to
go to
your,
my own
go to your
repo.
repository, yeah. There was yeah, new workflow. And you can
Okay.
search in there. If you don't want it, you can just
Oh.
cancel it. Just search for, there it is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that would give you an example. I think one of the things that it has that you don't have is that database URL.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give that a try. Why not?
Yeah.
How do I commit this? Oh, there we go. My Zoom thing was in the way. Okay. And I would guess we can have these going in parallel. We'll see which one wins. Okay, so I'm going to do a... Oh, that was on the main branch. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll paste this in. Okay. I'm just looking for what's different exactly. Okay. I don't like that it added a line of just blankness. Kill that. Okay. My brain power is deleting. So, or my brain power is depleting. Maybe it's deleting also. It's being deleted. So I didn't have the brain power for a good commit message. I should put miscellaneous. Okay, so this also failed. Okay. Isn't that mysterious? Unknown engine on Ubuntu 2204. Great. All right. So I'm going to
Yeah,
stick with this.
I changed mine to like Ubuntu latest, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's what
No,
it
that's
is.
what mine is too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll keep going with this other one. And I'll keep going until either it works or I die of old age, whichever comes first. The end of this video will just be a skeleton sitting in this chair. Okay, so I'm getting this error. File name, blah, blah, blah. This is kind of a weird one. I'm going to tell ChatGPT about this error. Okay, is ready. It looks like maybe ChatGPT just got a little overeager. I don't think we need any of this health check stuff. And I don't think we need Redis at all. Okay. Remove health checks and Redis. Okay. 14th time's a charm. Although it's probably not. I'd be really surprised if it works this time. But maybe we'll at least get a different error than we did in the very most recent time. Well, it's probably a decent time for another glacier fact. The glaciers that covered Michigan were so heavy that they made Michigan sink. And today, Michigan is still rebounding from the glaciers that melted thousands of years ago. I imagine the programming is just kind of a sideshow for you guys, and you're mainly here for the glacier facts.
Through what mechanism, though, is it still rising?
I don't think I know. It's just like it got squished and now it's like unsquishing like a mattress.
Is that the scientific term for it?
Call an analogy, Mike. Okay, yeah, for some reason it took away the database password part, and I gave it the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know if that was actually the right thing for it to have done. And it doesn't have host either, which is interesting. I'm guessing we're just going to get all the same stuff we got before. I'm going to put Saturn for the password. I don't know if that actually matters what it is. Attempt to fix invers. When this call first started, I had a fear that I was going to just finish in the first 10 minutes. But it turns out my fears were misplaced. Okay, while this is going, I think maybe a productive use of our time would be to try to understand this file format a little better. So most of the confusions people have with Docker, when people say they don't understand Docker, really what they don't understand is Linux networking and Linux file systems. And I think maybe an issue we have here is that we have this Postgres service running somewhere, and we're attempting to make a connection to it, but either the Postgres service is not actually running, or our connection attempt is bad. I think one of those two things must be the case. And I assume it's the latter, but I don't know that for absolute certain. And the question is, how do we determine which one of those two things it is? I don't know the answer to that yet. Okay, and I'm going to maybe study this a little bit. Interestingly, this does have these health checks. And we'll just go line by line. Jobs, container job. Let's see if I have the same thing. I don't. Okay, well, that's maybe a clue.
I believe that the container job or the build is just you giving a name to that job itself.
Oh, I see.
You could call it foobar if you want.
I see. Okay. Oh, and this is interesting, this env section under steps. Huh. That seems perhaps significant that, oh yeah. I remember that word, isostatic. Okay. So that might be worth trying, because here, well, it's just in a different place. And when it does the run, yeah. I thought this like smelled funny when it was telling us to do all this stuff. This seems like not a reasonable thing to ask us to do, to put all these bazillion E flags in here. So I bet this makes it so these invars end up here without us having to do that. And let's go check what is probably another failure. Doesn't help that this just loads so slowly every time. Okay. Same database password business again. Oh, you know what? We're not setting database password here. Well, there. Fix stuff. I actually have a faint hope that this may work. Faint hope.
So if this were a real production application, would you squash all this before you push it in?
Absolutely. Because I think commit should be atomic, and also branches should be atomic. And, you know, it's like the atomicity is relative. And my atomic commits are at a certain scale when they're in the context of my branch. But then when the branch gets merged into main or master or whatever, we're now at a different scale, and it'd be inappropriate to have those really, really fine-grained commits there in the commit history. It would just clutter things up, and that's not the granularity at which I want to see things when I'm looking at the history of the master branch. And so I think it's better to squash. Do you have a take on that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I would probably do the same. The
Yeah.
half working CI is not working CI.
Yeah.
And you're not really committing because you want to commit. You're committing because you have to push it to the server and see what happens.
Exactly. Okay, so we do get something different. Key not found database username. Let's see if I made a mistake around that. Okay. Well, interesting. Does it give us any more diagnostic info? Line 5. Although I don't feel like I can trust its line numbers, because it feels like it, I don't know, maybe
Is that
it
line
actually
5 of
starts
your
here.
database config?
Right, like 0, 1, 2, 3. Well,
Like your
5.
config/database dot YAML?
Oh,
Because that's where it's probably calling it. Yeah,
0,
you're doing a
1,
fetch.
2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah. So that feels, Jonathan, does that seem like it made it farther because we're not getting an error from here? Now we're getting an error from here?
No, I think you're getting an error here always.
Okay.
I would pull you're gonna love this. I would throw those -E and pass it in just because I think that's pretty explicit. That way you can at least know that your YAML's not screwing you up.
Okay. Well, I might take your suggestion, but I'm going to hesitate for a moment.
The other thing is I am seeing example YAML, and I don't know if this is right, where they have it looks like an env key is before the run key. I don't think the order matters, but that's one other thing because I'm looking at a bunch of examples. They all have name, environment, and then run.
Well, it does certainly seem, whoops, it seems logical to have the in first. So let's just do that just because. So maybe like here?
So it would be on line between 31 and 30 and 31.
Oh, because it's the env for that.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, that is, I wasn't even paying attention. Config database.yml. Okay, and the one before that, so number 15, and this is waiting to load. I'm curious what the nature of that error was. Okay. That was from config database YML line 21, which is interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's when you had the stuff that you're on, where you had the -e, but you had forgotten to put password in.
But look, this is the production config. That's weird.
But it's going to grab it from the default first.
Okay, but why was it even trying to get here?
I think CI runs as production, doesn't it?
Seems like it should run in the test environment. That'd be really, yeah, that would be really inappropriate to run in the test environment or in the production environment.
I mean, typically you'd have a CI environment set up.
Yeah, but it's not going to use your production database credentials, for example.
True.
So it seems completely incorrect that it would have been trying to use 21. So something was,
that'd be using your CI production database credentials, right? Because it's going to be using a database URL or something like that. But you'd have you'd have a production configuration, I assume, if you're not using a specialized CI environment.
That's maybe, well, not maybe, that's not the same as I've done it in the past, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, key not found, database username. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this.
Which is sure you are specifying your Rails environment as test there.
Right. So that makes me think that when these infairs were wherever they were, when did we change that? Hang on a second. Yeah, here. Hang on a second. Let's just go to here. Yeah, here the infairs were outside of steps, and I think they were only picked up once they went inside of steps, because that's when we stopped getting the error on line 21 and we started getting the error on line 5 instead. Does my logic seem correct there, that suggests that when we moved this chunk from outside steps to inside of steps, that it started picking up Rails env, whereas it was not picking up Rails env before? Nobody is saying either way whether they think my logic is correct. Well, I think so. I don't think I'm mistaken about that. Okay. But we still have a problem with database username. So oh, I don't have the file open that I thought I had open. Okay. So we're running into this problem. It's the first kind of custom env that it's trying to get, and it's saying it's not there. Just to make sure I didn't make some kind of typo. Yep, it's the same. Okay. And it does seem to be picking up Rails env test, although I don't know if that for absolute certain. And so my question is whether database username is making it onto the Docker container in GitHub Actions. And so I want to know how I can know that for sure. But I don't know how I could test that. Okay, let's maybe read this a little bit more closely. An error occurred while loading this specific test file. Key not found, database username. Okay, I'm just going to look at this because why not? I don't think it'll give me any insights. No, it doesn't. I just wanted to lay eyes on it just in case. Is there anything interesting down here? No, I think it's just repeating the same thing once per test file.
This might be a little bit of a mix of the CI and Docker. Are those environment variables available to the system that's running, but you're not pushing that into the Docker container that's running?
Might be right. Yeah, so
So
Jonathan, I think I'll finally take you up on your suggestion.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Okay, so is this how that works?
I think it's after the run. That's how you had it before anyways. My Docker's rusty.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm not even going to bother with anything else because add -e database username. I'm not going to bother with anything else yet because just having that one is enough to tell us like either we'll get the same error again or we won't. Okay. Yeah, so it'd be nice, it would be nice if it were a little more transparent what the architecture of this GitHub action system is. Because like on line 37 here, obviously I'm running a Docker container. But what's not obvious to me is for this env here, what's that the env of? And that I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be running on like the bash shell or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think your inference there is correct, Jonathan. It's just that it was not by any means blatantly obvious to me that that's how that worked. I would have assumed, with this Postgres service, when you're establishing these envars, those are the envars on the Postgres container. So one would assume that this is symmetrical and that these envars are envars for a container too. But if what we're currently tentatively believing is actually true, these aren't envars on a container, they're envars on, I don't know what it is, but some virtual machine or something that runs a container inside of it. Okay, so this did not work either. Oh, Nelson's sharing his config. Okay. All right, I'll check that in a second after I look at these errors. Oh, key not found database host.
That's a new problem. That's good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'll do all of these. Database password, database host, database port. There we go. Add other and pairs. I can't believe all you masochists are still here. Okay. Okay, so we have this env. Okay, so this is a little bit different. This is not the Docker route. This is well, I don't know what to call it. But there's not a Docker file involved right here.
So I think what's happening with that is by putting the env key kind of towards the root, it means that all of the stuff running after it has access to that. But we put the env just on the Docker part of it. So only that step would have that environment, access those environment variables.
I see. Okay. Yes, now we get that again. But that's good. Now we've gotten past our environment variable issue. Do we have a database host here? No. Okay. I'm going to change that to localhost in both cases and see what happens. Actually, I'm going to check here. Okay, Postgres. Interesting. My knowledge, you can't connect to GitHub Actions service container, but you could likely execute commands in the container and inspect environment. Oh, I see. Okay. Hang on, my thinking is muddy right now. Okay, so I understand that if I set database host here, that's the URL for the service we're trying to connect to where the database is running. But why do we need the database host here? Do we need a database host here? Yeah, I don't think that makes sense. Oh, I have one here, but I don't know why. Maybe that's just an error. Okay. Oh, I made that mistake again. Okay, change database host to local host. And sometimes sometimes it matters whether it's local host or it's 127.0.0.1. So if this doesn't work, I'll try that. And if that doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do, but we'll do something.
I'm seeing lots of stuff with localhost. I'm guessing we got it now.
You think so?
I'm optimistic.
I always say optimism is the worst sin in programming.
Just never be wrong, and you're good to go.
Well, I'm wrong almost the opposite of never.
I mean, PHP is really the worst in programming, but okay.
I'd take 5 years ago PHP over 5 years ago JavaScript.
Yeah, I think maybe I would too. Okay, it's about to run the tests. Maybe. I'm just gonna look at our config file while this is going. Yeah, I don't think the host makes sense because I don't think we get to decide that. I think it just is what it is. Yeah, and maybe in a Docker Compose situation, for some reason, when I do Docker Compose locally, the host name for the Postgres service is Postgres, not localhost. But I don't understand why that is.
I believe
Jonathan,
networking
what's that?
gives you the service name immediately for your network internally. So if you call your service Postgres, you can get to it by calling Postgres.
I do not understand. Can you say it again?
So your Docker networking that happens behind the scenes uses your service name for the machine when it's connecting. So Docker will allow connections between your different containers by those names. So because you've set up a Postgres service, that becomes its host name within the Docker context in the networking.
Okay.
Similar to if you had
understand.
like web or app, you would be able to go to that as well with from your local host.
Okay. I understand conceptually. I don't know how mechanically that works, but probably not important right for the moment. Okay. Connection refused. What did we get last time? Was it also connection refused or was it different? Yeah, it was different. Could not translate hostname Postgres to address. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Because it's like it's saying Postgres. We don't know anything about that. Whereas it knows how to deal with localhost. It's just saying nothing's running on 127.0.0.1. Okay. So let's get ChatGPT involved again. Even though it hasn't been super helpful with this. It doesn't seem to know GitHub Actions super well. Ha. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it says I should use Postgres just like I was using before.
What did it give you for that ports section?
5432.
GitHub's default is saying to put that whole thing in double quotes. So quote 5432, colon 5432 quote. I'm just trying to diff it. I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's...
Can't hurt. I think that's smart to make it the exact same. Okay, and I'm gonna give this to ChatGPT. I'm gonna push this.
It's also saying it. It's also using Postgres DB. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna get this one. When I clicked that link, it just didn't navigate at all. I'm not even gonna wait. I'm just gonna go by memory. It says can't resolve Postgres. It said something like that. Oh, here we go. It is sluggish. Yeah, I'm just gonna go by this. Network setup in GitHub Actions is different from Docker Compose. Okay. I'm going to look at this one more time. This is interesting. It does have the host here. Postgres host, Postgres. Maybe there's something special about the naming. Doesn't hurt to make it the same. Oops. Postgres host, Postgres port. No username and password, which is interesting. I'll try it. But my config file has username and password, and it's called database username and database password. I don't think these different names are going to work.
Yeah, you also specify the database itself, like that you're using.
Right.
You don't calling it Saturn.
Yeah. Oh, do you mean you think I need to add something for the database
So in
name?
So on line like 17-ish. A database underscore database. Although the examples I'm seeing call that Postgres DB and Postgres user.
I don't quite understand. Okay, so is this what we got on the most recent one? Yes. Okay, not surprising. What's this telling us to do? So we could modify. Okay, Postgres user, Postgres password. Oh, is this
Yeah,
what you're
that
talking about,
stuff.
Jonathan?
Yeah. Because I think with the environment variables that you're passing in there, it's kind of like an API. So you're configuring the database that's running in that container. So Postgres DB username and password is magic that configures the system properly. So if you put in foo bar, it's just going to ignore it.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can probably remove 17, 18, and 19.
You think so, even though I have these?
Yeah, because what's happening is because you don't you're not configuring or doing anything with the Postgres server.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. User password DB. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then it left these. Yep. Okay, so that all makes sense. Okay. Well, I have a bit of hope.
I think you're still going to need to have the local host for the database at the very bottom on 33.
You think so?
That's my bet.
I'm betting Postgres.
All right.
We'll see who wins.
I would
I've already
bet
been one wrong.
Postgres too.
I thought you're saying betting Postgres and then the number 2. I'm like, interesting bet.
No.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to say earlier is the service name that you have in your Docker Compose file is basically like a DNS lookup you would get automatically with Docker Magic.
Got it.
So when you're on the same Docker network, it works. If you happen to have more than one Docker network configured, you can't cross those networks.
That makes sense. Yeah, I never understood how, for example, Postgres magically resolved to a certain IP or whatever. But if it resolves like a DNS name, then that makes sense. And the fact that there's like a Docker network that handles that helps solve the mystery too. Okay, Glacier facts. Here's a little quiz for you guys. Which country has the most glacial ice in the world?
Greenland.
Greenland was Eric's guess. All right, that's incorrect. Anybody else want to venture a guess? I'm going to change this to localhost. Okay. Change host to local host. Okay. Helmut's guess is Iceland. No, it's not Iceland. Although it is logical to imagine that Iceland is an icy country.
Are we automatically ruling out Antarctica? I mean, that would probably win.
Well, it's a good question.
Not truly a country, it's a continent.
Not a country, yeah. Anyway, the answer is Pakistan. I bet nobody would have guessed I certainly would have guessed Pakistan. Yeah, WTF is right. Guess the US state with the greatest number of glaciers. I apparently know all this stuff. Alaska, it is not Alaska. I'll give you a clue. It's another surprising one. It's not Alabama. Washington, not Washington. It is, if my information is correct, it's Nevada. Okay, so localhost didn't work either. Okay. Well, what now? Okay, so I'm going to change this back to Postgres because even though that didn't work, neither did localhost.
What are you using for the database? The database that in the that you're connecting to.
What am I using for the database?
Like
that I'm connecting to?
database underscore DB to connect it to Saturn.
I don't think I am specifying that.
That would be like Saturn underscore test, not Saturn. If you change that, the Postgres part of it.
Yes, but it's not giving me an error saying the database doesn't exist. It's saying the host itself doesn't even exist.
Did it say the host or did it say connection was refused?
Well, isn't the refusal of the connection a network issue?
Not if the database said your credentials are wrong because the database you're trying to connect to doesn't exist.
Okay, we'll try it. Localhost and
so on the what would be 19, it'd be Saturn test.
Okay. I don't think this is going to work, but I would be delighted to be wrong.
Because I think what's happening is you're trying to connect to Saturn underscore test, and the database server is saying that's not a real thing.
Okay.
And it can't be Postgres because it's saying that it can't translate Postgres to an IP address. That's because we're not running in a Docker Compose environment. It's just straight Docker.
Thanks for the well wishes, Helmet. Talk to you later. Yeah, so Jonathan, I agree with you about Postgres thing. We're not in a Docker, we're not inside a Docker network. Maybe, but if that's true, then why are they showing us this example where Postgres host is Postgres? Those two ideas seem to conflict, right?
Can you scroll up in that YAML example there, or is that the top of it?
This is the top of this one. Yeah, odd that it doesn't have a PostgreSQL service. Is this just a snippet, an incomplete snippet? Because here's another one. Are all their snippets just incomplete? Okay, here's a Redis one. Oh, let's see. Okay, so Redis host is Redis. So this must be in a Docker network, because otherwise I don't see how these could work.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about what you're saying, but I think you're wrong about your setup because it should be resolving that Postgres to whenever you've changed that to not be localhost, it yells at you. So I wonder if this is running it in a different setup or something.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. Okay, services. Let me pay really close attention to the indentation. Okay. This is called container job. Mine's called build. Runs on Ubuntu latest. Okay. Yeah, and like you said, Jonathan, I think the name is just arbitrary. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm. I do know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And this is the base image, apparently. I don't have a base image. Don't know if that really matters. Maybe it matters. Well, no, I don't think it matters because I have a custom image of my own. Oh, hang on. If I go to my Docker Compose, my app is a service that's sibling level to Postgres. It's not the case here. And so it's not surprising that this doesn't know anything about something called Postgres because it's not configured the same way. I'm not saying I think this will work, but like, what if we have something more like this? And we probably need I'm gonna leave those things what they are. I think this has basically no hope of working. But do you see my logic there, Jonathan?
Yes, but you're looking at the Docker Compose stuff, which is kind of because your
Doesn't
Docker
work the same.
Compose. Yeah, this is kind of your ci.em was kind of like the Docker Compose, but you're specifying the Docker file as part of the build process.
Little rant. This is what I fucking hate about all these CI configs. It's like some weird bastardized version of something. It's not like based on anything that people are used to. It's this unique thing to that CI service. Circle CI is the exact same way. It's not exactly a Docker Compose config. It's this weird Circle CI thing. And I'm really not a fan. That's part of what motivated me to create my own Circle or my own CI service. Is the config for mine is just a Docker file. You just plug in your Docker file and that's all you need. Okay, anyway, now that I got that out of my system, where do we go from here? I'm just going to check this out because I realize that what I just did is doesn't have a chance of working at all.
Did we check the last build status?
I don't think so. Just waiting for it to refresh.
This
Okay,
is painfully
apparently.
slow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, there we go. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, so I think this connection is upstream of the database name. Okay. So this is a different type of thing. It's not Docker based. I'm going to do this. GitHub Action containerized service example. GitHub Actions. This might be just where we were just now. Whatever it is, it's not all that helpful. Okay, I think this is where we were just a moment ago. Okay, and so evidently this can know about this Postgres service, even though this is down here. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this. Put it here. I'm going to get rid of a lot of these comments because they're just distracting. Okay. And I don't know if these health checks are necessary, but they have them and we don't. So let's include them. And what the heck, I'll just call this container job. And I'm going to put a container. Ruby
The health checks
312.
actually might be what it is, because if it's trying to connect before the Postgres server is up and running.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ruby 312. That's a really good point, actually. Okay, just because I'm already doing it, I'm gonna continue to inspect this a little bit. Okay, and they just have Postgres, not Alpine. So who knows if that makes a difference, but I'm gonna change that to match. I see they have different envars, but I'm not gonna mess with that at the moment. Okay, we have the checkout step. They install the dependencies. They don't have a build like we do, but that's probably because theirs just works differently. Okay. What did I just do? We'll say add health checks. I can't believe that 2 hours in, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with us.
I'm personally and professionally offended by GitHub right now, so I can't go till it's complete.
Yeah.
I'm just tuned in while I do the dishes and chores.
We had to know where I stand in the priorities.
Well, I gotta use my mind while I'm doing brainless work.
Oh, and also Nelson, you're here twice, so we don't have 5 people. We only have 4 people. And I don't even know if you
One was
fully
my
count,
computer and
Nelson,
the
because
others-
you're doing the dishes.
I'm moving around. I'm on my phone and the computer.
Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. Docker build, Docker not found. I don't know why that happened. Maybe that happened because I did this container change. Let's maybe not do that. I think that was unwise of me to make so many changes at once. Here's a question for you guys while we're waiting. Market research for me. What's your level of satisfaction with whatever CI you're using? And if there's anything you don't like about it, what is it?
I've set it up and it's frustrating to get set up, but then I kind of forget about it and it just runs in the background.
And which product are you using?
Circle CI and GitHub Actions.
Okay. Yeah, one thing that really drives me nuts about Circle CI is the things that I very commonly need, and you would think everybody needs, are not easy to get to. Like when a build fails, I have to click on it and then click on the step that ran and then click on the test tab. And it's like, clearly that's what it should show that right. I shouldn't even have to click on anything to see which test failed. Okay, connection refused. Okay. Well, the health checks didn't do it for us. Interestingly, this one doesn't have the ports. I don't think that does anything. It also doesn't have user or DB. And the password is Postgres. Postgres host is Postgres. I'm going to put that. Postgres port is 5432. I'm just going to try it. I'm going to text my wife and tell her why it's taking so long. The meeting is running long because why? Because I can't, because I'm having trouble. With the thing I'm trying to show. Okay. So we're waiting for the setup job step. It feels like this is taking a long time. I don't know if that's good or bad. Okay, it just wasn't updating the display, it seems like. Okay. Same deal, but interestingly, it says 127.001, but we didn't say that. We said Postgres. Oh, but we did say database host. Okay, let's try Postgres. I don't care if I have to stay up till 4 a.m. I'm not going to bed until I figure this out. The moment of truth. Okay, it's not quite the moment of truth.
Sorry, I missed the part where, was there an explanation to why we're doing it with Docker and not the the YML files that Docker also provides?
No, I think at this point it's just pure stubbornness. But maybe it's time to give up on this route. I could not translate hostname Postgres. Okay, so Nelson, you had shared a link to your config. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to copy this. Okay. Okay, so apparently the database still is Dockerized. Okay, still have the same health checks. And we have this env section here. But of course, instead of the ones you have there, I'm going to use the values that I have.
You know what? Ruby running inside your Docker, if it hits localhost, it's hitting the localhost inside Docker, not localhost of like the entire container.
Okay.
So correct me if someone else if I'm completely wrong here, but you've got kind of like you kind of have like your raw bash container. Postgres is running inside of there. Docker's running inside of there, but inside of Docker, localhost is the local host inside of Docker, not like that root local host. So that's why it's not being able to reach out at localhost, which is all the other examples that we're seeing.
That would make sense.
The stuff that is working with Docker looks like it's going to be where you're having the Postgres service being resolved. When you pass that into Docker, it's going to be the actual IP address, not your 127.0.0.1. So the question is, why is your like root container not? We're focusing on getting the Docker part of it working properly, but I think that the Docker is not working properly with like the root part of it.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't have what I think is probably an accurate mental model of what's the host machine and what's the container.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Postgres and Docker are running on the host machine, and then Rails is running in Docker. So when Rails asks for localhost, it's getting the Docker localhost, not the root machine localhost, which is what you're.
When you say root machine, do you mean host machine?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you put in what it looks like, if you're going to use the Docker setup, the thing to figure out is why the database host Postgres isn't resolving.
Yeah, that part is a mystery to me. And like, yeah, that's another part of what I don't like about this is like, you don't have access to an environment where you can interrogate the environment and figure out what's what and what's going on and that stuff. And the test cycle is so slow. You have to commit and push and all that. Whereas if it just goes off of a Docker file like mine does, as long as everything works locally, everything's going to work.
So with what you have right now running just like the raw setup, you'd want to be changing line 29 to be localhost because now you're operating within that.
Oh, sorry. When I say what I have, I mean my new circle, my new CI service that I'm building.
Yeah.
Oh, you understood that? You were talking about, I guess I misunderstood what you were saying.
Yeah, so for what we're looking at right now, the GitHub, the ci.yaml that's up on your screen right now, you're still going to run into that problem with Postgres not resolving to an IP address. So on line 29, you're going to change that to localhost because now you're not using Docker stuff.
Now I'm confused. Are you saying that for this, like I want to literally do this right now?
Right. Because
Okay.
now, so in here, you're doing on line 46. Sorry, yeah, on line 46, you're executing your test suite, right? But you're executing that within the host machine because you don't have anything with Docker on here right now.
I don't believe that's correct. Because okay, all right. Let me get this one going, then I'll explain why I believe what I believe. Okay, so I'm just gonna do that. We still need to create the DB. We still need to do bundle install. Okay. I don't think I need node. I think I'll leave it like that. Okay. So now to explain why I believe what I believe about this. When I run this app, so this app that we're in right now, the CI platform called Saturn, it runs Rails natively, and then it runs Postgres in a container. And for my end, oh, look at that. Well, looks like I get to eat crow. All right. So maybe you're right, Jonathan. We'll let this run in parallel. Change host to, and maybe localhost would work too. And let's actually do this. Oh, and it looks like this failed. Probably the other ones will fail too, because it looks like I have unknown engine. Oh yeah, we got this before. Unknown engine. Okay. GitHub Actions, unknown engine. Maybe I have to specify Ruby 3.1.2. And is this a GitHub Actions issue? Yep. Okay. Okay, apparently we need this. And is this person including their YML file? No. Okay, and set up Ruby. I'm guessing it's that. Okay. Okay, seems not to have immediately failed the way the other one did. Or maybe it still has to get to the setup Ruby step. In any case, I'm going to close some of these extra tabs. Okay, it did in fact fail at the setup Ruby step. Yep, it gives this. Okay, using as input from file Ruby version. I'm going to ask ChatGPT about this one. My GitHub Actions fails. Here's my config. See what it tells us about that. No version specified in your Ruby version file. Okay. Well, you can specify there. I think I'll do a Ruby version file instead. Oops.
Isn't it 3.2.1, not 3.1.2?
Let's see. It's 3.1.2. I'm gonna read what else is said. In the meantime, okay. Failed again. Oh, but in a different way. Platform mismatch.
That bundle lock line will get it for you. You're on an M1 Mac.
Yes, sir.
So by default, it only includes stuff for M1 Mac stuff.
Okay. Well, we're setting a record for longest code with Jason meetup session ever. Or past the Ruby step, it looks like it. Set up Ruby. Installing the gems, Rails dependencies. Create DB. Okay, it failed there. Not very informative message. But I'm going to try something slightly different. I'm going to do Rails DB create. At this point, it feels a little less like flailing and a little more like actual progress. Not to jinx us. I'm going to look at something here. Caught my eye. Postgres service is starting, waiting 2 seconds before checking again. Postgres service is healthy. Okay. Connection refused. Couldn't create database. Okay. Well, now I'm going to go back and try this.
Line 19, I think, is going to be still being switched to the Saturn test.
And you think that because, how come?
In your database.yaml, that's what you're trying to connect to.
That is true. But at this point in time, that database doesn't exist. I want to try to prove to you that that doesn't matter for purposes of connection. And I could be wrong.
Oh, actually, can you go back to your CI, the CI.yaml?
Yeah.
You're using Postgres for the database user and password on 17 and 18, and Saturn, that's the host. Yeah, that's a separate thing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So you're sure you're going to squash this before committing?
Ha!
You could always create a new branch that has all the history in it if you want the history and then squash.
Right.
Nobody wants that history.
I was just going to say, this is a history I want to forget. Not find your database Postgres. Oh, this looks different. Okay. Now, so that was not the same connection error. I'm just reading this out of curiosity. You may need to create your database. And then here, couldn't create Saturn test database. Oh yeah, because I guess when it's trying to connect, it's trying to connect to a specific database. Maybe that's like not even supposed to be there at all. Just for shits and giggles, I'm gonna get that going. Okay, that failed on the create DB step. That is weird. Could not find your database Postgres. I thought we had like changed that. Might change this back to localhost if this one here doesn't work. Looks like errors. Yeah. Okay, let's try localhost. And let's also try, what was this? Oh no,
Postgres DB Saturn test.
thanks. Okay, couldn't connect. So I do think it's Postgres.
Eventually, we run out of options to try, right?
Yeah, well, I feel like we're narrowing it down. Okay, this failed. Probably because of that localhost thing. Okay. I want to get my hands on that error that we had moments ago.
It mentions config database YAML there specifically. And you've been looking in your CI file, haven't you?
Yeah.
Did you make changes to the config database?
I don't think so. Yeah, it's weird that it's complaining that the database could not be found, even though this is happening before the step where we're trying to create the database. Seems totally illogical. Okay, I'm getting this error. Here's my config file. And here's config database That YAML. Help me. Is this the most recent one? Yes. Same error. Configuration file seems correct. Host name should be Postgres. I'm gonna read this. Error message seems to suggest can't connect. Yes. Instead of localhost. I don't think the problem is that we can't connect to the database. Here's something we can try. Okay. So do we get any errors when we just take away that stuff? Okay. Okay, and then do we get any errors when we just do Rails DB create? Let's try that. Because what I want to have a firmer understanding of. Oh, this does in fact come from Rails DB create.
The thing where it says right there, we can't find your database Postgres. You're not using that in any of your configuration except for the host name. So I think it's still trying to connect. It's not connecting to the Postgres. I think it's still not resolving that IP address.
Let's try this.
Like if you change that to, I was gonna say foobar. I bet you it's gonna. My guess is that it's gonna say can't connect to Postgres.
I bet, Jonathan, that we're going to get a different error. It's going to be an error about not being able to connect, but not the same. It's not going to be this one is my guess. Okay, so we did have a successful one. So that proves what we kind of already knew, which is that it's coming from the Rails DB create step. Ooh. Wait, this is what this was before. I don't know if we tried this exact combo before. I feel like we have. I kind of feel like that has a chance of working. Okay, well, I was wrong about that. Oh, but it doesn't say Postgres. It just says Postgres. Maybe that's hard coded in GitHub Actions. God damn it. Hang on, couldn't create Saturn test database. Am I looking at what I think I'm looking at? Change everything to Postgres. Okay.
That's still coming from your database.yaml.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I want to ask a question. You have
Mhm.
database passwords set in your YAML file here, but in your database or in your config database YAML, I don't think you have the password in that file. Do you need to pull that in from your env there? You have it in your production section, but that's the only way you have, only place you have password.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll try that. But first, yeah, let me just try that.
I would expect you would have gotten a different error along all this time if that was the problem, though.
Yeah, because it didn't say invalid credentials or anything like that.
We have gotten connection refused before,
That's true.
which that'll be a nice little kick in the pants.
Ha. I'll try something else too. Okay, I'm gonna try. Okay, what the heck is in my Docker Compose again? Yeah, there's no password here. No password whatsoever. And I'm gonna put password as nothing. And did I have any kind of... No, there's no like trust or whatever. Oh yeah, there is. Here. Postgres user and Postgres. Okay, hang on. Okay. So the password thing seems not to have worked. Failed in the same way. When all else fails, just to actually learn some stuff. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this like executable YML, and I think a lot of other people are also not. Workflows, events, and jobs, and actions. All right, Biley ping. Create an example workflow. Okay, let's see how this is doing over here. Seems to take so much longer when we're watching it. Okay, create DB failed. My goodness. I think I might be ready to throw in the towel. Any objections? Sounds like no.
Sometimes taking some time is the best thing you can do.
Yeah. But
Let's
what
try
utter
one-
shame.
I don't
What's
think you
that?
had to try one thing.
Yeah, let's try one thing.
All right, in the ci.yaml,
Okay.
underneath runs on, do a container. What are you? Container. That's gonna be try Ruby latest. Ruby : latest. And for your host, do Postgres, which you do have. For your Postgres DB on line 20, make that Saturn test.
Okay.
And let's scroll down. Is there anything else? I think that's it.
I'm going to propose one thing. I think Ruby latest might give us a mismatching version. You think
It
we
might.
should do, maybe we should do 312.
Yeah, let's do that. The only other thing is I maybe try removing, there's that using Ruby something down in the steps. Yeah, that 35 to 38.
Oh, I see why you're saying that. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to try this exact same thing, but with Postgres, with this. Oops. Okay. There should be two. I guess I didn't push. There we go. I'm just kind of scrolling through this and seeing what's what. Okay. Yeah, this containerized services thing seems like the relevant part of the docs. They certainly are using a container, at least in this case.
Yeah, I think what the container is giving you is a base install of Node 16 and the stuff that goes with it. So I wonder if they just don't have a Ruby container, which I'm hoping they do. That's what I'm taking it. I'm not seeing any documentation that they do.
I'm guessing this comes from Docker Hub. They only give host and port. Here they only give password. And again, I wonder if Postgres, we've already been down this road, but I wonder if Postgres host and Postgres port are special. I don't know. What? Well, I'll be okay. Now we're still not quite there yet. We still need to run the tests.
You'll want to change that to DB prepare above as well to migrate.
Yeah. Like that?
I think so.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, you are a miracle worker.
I just luckily guessed enough times.
But what's interesting is it seems like PostgreSDB maybe doesn't matter because it passed both ways. You know what I mean?
Oh, but as you did a DB create, so I bet it created the database either way. I wonder if you have like admin credentials, so then you I'm speculating, but I wonder if you have admin
Yeah.
credentials, so you just created the database and said, forget it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this isn't even maybe this could just be nothing and it still works. But we'll wait on that. It seems like when we're doing something else, this takes like no time at all, and when we watch it, it takes like 20 minutes.
I tried to look up Glacier dad jokes,
Okay.
but it looks like most of them are on Reddit. So
Oh no.
so they're all private.
Come on, let them flow.
Oh,
Well, we can do this. Actually, tell me 5 glacier jokes. I'm not laughing. Sorry, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a lot of things. I've discovered funny is not one of them. Okay, so this failed.
You should be offended by the last one, anyways. It's talking about an iceberg, not a glacier.
Ha! Well, Mike persuaded me of his correctness. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this failed not because of the database stuff, but because the test suite actually failed. Okay, well, I'm fine with that. Maybe. Oh, fuck. We'll just fix it. Can't get like 90% of the way there and give up.
4 hours later.
Well,
Of course, 4 hours later would be his 4 a.m. cutoff point for him almost.
So I think this is where you start touching on another bunny hole with a rabbit hole to go down, which is you're hard coding those credentials into the config file. So this is where you're going to start getting into the GitHub secrets. That way you can keep your secrets out of your GitHub action file.
But
Or use credentials.
yeah, these
inside
are
of
just
Rails.
arbitrary values, and I think I'm like well, I was gonna say I think I'm like stubbing that. No. Okay. So these values are like tautological, like they can't be wrong no matter what they are. So any old values will work for these because the tests are making requests with these values, and then the application is checking those credentials against the same invers. And so that's why anything you put will be correct.
Okay.
But yeah, if I have anything that's like actually a sensitive value, then yes, I'll have to use those secrets. I don't think I have anything so far that is. Did it work?
I think that's a run.
Okay.
That wasn't so hard.
Ha ha. Yeah. Piece of cake. Only took what time did we start? 9 o'clock. Only took 3 hours. Wow. All
That's
right.
2 hours and 50 minutes. Come on.
That's true. I'm exaggerating.
And we talked about glaciers.
That's true. There was some preamble as well.
Turns out
Well-
GitHub was inspired by our conversation.
Now it's like, do we hop off or do we have a contest to see whether Jonathan or Eric can stay on the call longer? Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me this long, guys. And have a good night. Have a good weekend. Talk to you next time.
All right.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Bye, guys.